Burlington. My name is John Petrin, Burlington Town Administrator, and welcome to Town Administrator's Corner. If you've seen the show, what we try to do is just talk about what's happening here in Burlington and talk about specific topics as to operations and how we perform for the town of Burlington. Today I have a special guest, John Sanchez, Director of Public Works.
Hi, John.
So you've probably been the guest who's been on the show most over the years because you're always asking for big money items.
I thought it's because nobody else will show up.
Yeah, it's true too. Yeah, and you're the one who can compete with me on the mic. So, we're here to talk about water once again. So we've had a couple of shows on water in the past, and today again we're going to talk about water and our future of water here in town.
Right, and this is, we all know where we've been with this particular treatment plant. We are, by the way, at the Vinebrook treatment plant in the Middlesex Turnpike here in Burlington. And we're looking at where do we go from here? We know we've had the issues with the 1,4-dioxane. We talked about that in prior shows.
Yeah.
Since 2013, we have not been running 3 particular wells that come to this treatment plant. Out of the 7, 3 of them have been offline to prevent the 1,4-dioxane from entering our system. So the question is, where do we go from here?
Right now? So where we are today, today is Tuesday, April 17th, and town meeting begins on Monday, May 14th. And at that point, we're presenting through the Board of Selectmen articles to basically move us forward, and that is joining MRWA. So what we'd like to talk about today is a little about where we are today and why we're moving forward with that. So the Board of Selectmen at a recent meeting voted unanimously to support joining MRWA and moving, transitioning a little bit at a time towards MRWA water while continuing to use town water. And also there was a special committee from town meeting that was appointed last year, the Town Meeting Water Study Committee, and they've also voted unanimously to support this. So next week we are having a special session for town meeting members and residents of the town to come out and hear a presentation as to what all this means. So they're going to hear from you and the Water Study Committee as to what all this means to the town or why we're presenting this on May 14th.
So basically, John, we have, the issue with the 1,4-dioxane, we lost 1/3 of the capacity of this treatment plant. We used to be able to produce about 3 million gallons a day, year-round, pretty much, and we lost 1 million out of those 3. So the last 5 years, it's been very difficult for us to actually meet the summer demand. And there's many components of these issues. So when we look at water supply, we're looking at like 3 different things: reliability, water quality, and redundancy. So the most important thing is water quality right now, and I just want to assure everybody that the reason we took the wells offline was to assure water quality.
Right.
So we comply with all the DEP and the EPA regulations for water quality, and like I said, that was the reason why we took Train B offline.
Now, as to water quality, people receive a yearly report, from DPW as to the quality of our water and the situation.
Correct. In fact, we're preparing the one that is coming out this year. This is something we've been doing for many, many years now. We are required by the EPA to do that. We print it out, and everybody gets one at home in the states where the range has been for every one of the contaminants that we test for. It shows what the maximum value has been, the minimum value, the average, what the guidelines are, what the requirements are. And from that, CCR, we call it, Consumer Confidence Report, you can see that we have met all those guidelines for all the years.
So that's the water quality. And then talk a little bit about redundancy, as to what's our water supply now and what does redundancy mean in this situation?
So that's where we have the issue. In the summertime here, and because of the large demand that we get from people utilizing the in-ground sprinkler systems to water the grass, our water demand can go as high as 5.4 million gallons in one day. Now, 5.4 is a very large number, considering that we can typically put out about 3 million out of the mill pond, and now we can only do 2 out of this treatment plant. With 3 plus 2 is 5, and if we go up to 5.5, that means that now the tanks are taking over.
Our reserves are supplementing.
Correct. So for a short amount of time, I will say.
Right, right.
So redundancy means what happens if any one of the systems goes offline, either here or at the mill pond. How are we going to supply water to the town?
Now, we have 2 tanks.
We have three.
Three, but
2 of which are active.
So we're using 2 tanks to store our water. What's the capacity total of those 2 tanks?
Well, if you consider that the tanks were totally full, it's like 4.5 million gallons. However, not all of the water that is there is usable because of pressure considerations, and also because the tanks fluctuate in elevation. They're not always on the top.
Right.
And one of the reasons they're not always full is because of water quality. If we always kept the tanks full, then what you find is the water will go stale in the tanks, the water will go bad on us. So we have to use the water, refill the tanks, use the water to refill the tanks. So with the capacity of the tanks and the current demand that we get in the summertime, the town can't take care of itself if any system were to fail. It's unfortunate, but that's how we have lived actually over the last 5 years, and that's the main reason why the Board of Selectmen has instituted water restrictions pretty much yearly the last few years, and now an ongoing year-round water restriction is to limit that amount of water we use in the summer to barely have redundancy, and by that I mean with the help of our neighbors. It's not even by itself.
So what we have now is, we have 2 plants. So you're getting a view. We're here in the Vine Brook plant, which is the older plant. It's 20 years old now.
Right.
And then we have the Mill Pond plant, which is 10 years old.
Going in 10 years, yes.
Going on 10 years. And so those are our 2 water supplies. So we have water in 2 water tanks, and we have reserve. We can go to a reserve capacity with connections to Billerica and to Lexington at this point in time. But those are minor reserve capacities that can help us for a short period of time, but can't maintain a long haul, at this point in time.
And those are, we wouldn't call them reserve.
Yeah.
We call them emergency connections.
Yeah.
To actually tap either one of those 2, we need to go through a series of approvals before we can actually open the connection. That involves the selectmen, involves the DEP, involves the MRWA, involves the town of Lexington. So it involves a lot of people. And even if those connections are available, with the demand that we have in the summer, even with those, we don't have enough supply to get us to the 5.5 or 4.5 million gallons a day that we talked about earlier.
So one of the problems we have is safety, so we talked about the water quality as a safety issue, but another safety issue is fire protection. So what we have is we have to have a water supply in case of a fire. And if a fire does occur, it actually uses a lot of water, from the system. So that gets into the redundancy issue and having the capacity in case something goes wrong. So I think at this point, what we can say, our winter operations were kind of fine. So during the 6 months in the winter, we don't sweat as much, over the situation. But in the summer, we talk a lot about water on a day-to-day basis, as to being able to maintain our system, because we don't have the additional water to keep us there. And I just want to remind people of the discussion, and it is about irrigation systems. It's not about new businesses in town, new residential areas. As a matter of fact, we do quite well. We've been saying for a few years now, on average, we do better than most of the state on our water usage on a per household basis.
Yeah, that's correct. And actually, our water use per year has been in decline over the last 10 years, which is a good thing for the town. Problem is, our summer use is pretty high as compared to the year-round use, and that's what we have the issue. The second issue we have, though, John, is that this plant, in that reduced capacity mode that we are at 2 million gallons a day, is not sufficient to take care of the entire town.
Yeah.
In the winter time, even with the winter use, we were down to about 2.4, 2.5 million gallons a day. Well, this plant only does 2, which means that we are 500,000 gallons a day short. So if we need to do maintenance at the other treatment plant, as we should, unfortunately we are not able to, this plant is not big enough as it is right now to supply water to the town while we do that maintenance.
So we can't shut down for more than a day at a time without compromising our system.
We just play with the weather and see if it's going to rain, and during those months that are low demand, and then we'll fill up the tanks, and then everybody runs, and we'll get maybe 2 days as the tanks are dropping to do whatever we need to do and put everything back and go back to work again. So the issue of redundancy, it proves itself every time we need to do maintenance. Now, this happens in the background. We don't go, all of the selectmen meetings that we report, it's not something that most people know about. They open the faucet, water comes out, everything is fine. But the reality is that over the last 5 years, we have had to live under those conditions here.
And as I joke a little bit, but it's kind of true. When I get my phone call on Sunday from you during the summer, I know what it's going to be. We got a problem and we need to talk through, how we're going to manage to keep our water system going. And the problem is we're having more and more of those phone calls, as we go through. And so we need to, change our system.
But there's a reason for that too, John. And this is as we go without shutting down to do maintenance work, because we can't physically, it's not possible to do it. Then there's certain things that we try to let them go a little longer so we can actually survive the peaks of water use, which at the same time it comes in the back and hurt us with the issue of sometimes some emergencies or anything might have happened at the plant, and now we're running.
I mean, people have to realize, and that's one of the things we're talking about, is this is a 20-year-old plant. It's going to need to be replaced. A plant doesn't run forever. It needs to be replaced, and that's quite expensive. And then Mill Pond will need to be replaced down the road. So those are the things we look at, and the fact that these two plants are having trouble producing the amount of water that we need today. So the next question is, well, where do we get that water? So is there any more water we can pull from the town, and how do we, groundwater or surface water, how do we get that water from the town? Is that available here?
Well, as you know, there was a report done by Stantec, the town commission a few years ago, to try to help us determine where to go from here as far as water quantity and quality as well. And one of the options that is thrown over there is that, well, maybe we find new places for new wells.
Right.
Well, we know where we are here, which is not in a place that you're going to be able to find a place for really more wells, at least not the ones that are not contaminated, as these ones happen to be. So we have an option like that. The other option is let's try to get water from a reliable source outside of us, a redundant source, and that's where the MRWA comes in to help us with that little bit that we're needing on the end.
So this plant takes from groundwater around the Burlington Mall, between Terrace Hall, Burlington Mall, all that area. Our other plant actually is not water from the town. It's being moved in from the pumped in, from the Shawshene River, through Billerica and the Wilmington-Billerica area, and it's coming into our reservoir area. So we're supplementing much of that water in the reservoir with outside water as it is.
Right. The water in the reservoir is 99% from the Shawshene River.
Okay.
Very little is coming down from rain or from that particular area, because the reservoir itself is pretty high up, so there's no areas contributing to water to that. But when it comes to the two systems, it has worked okay until now with the demands that we have had. Like I said, what is really making troublesome for us is this lower capacity treatment plant here, which in the beginning we thought it was going to be temporary.
Right.
Now we've realized that it's been 5 years, a little longer, since we found out about this. The problem is not going away. 1,4-dioxane is in our system. In our wells, I should say. So where we go from here then is, following the recommendation of Stantec, is to do a phase approach. Phase one is to restore the 1 million gallons a day capacity that we lost to losing those three wells. And this is something we can do fairly easy. I call it fairly easy because nothing is easy, all right? But it will require us to build a new pipe on Adams Street to connect us to the town of Lexington, where they have a larger water main. and will be able to supply that 1 million gallons of water to us. Now, it's not as simple as just building the pipe. It'll require town meeting approval, it will require MRWA approval, it will require legislation and the governor to actually approve this. So it's a long process. It's probably going to be 1.5 to 2 years before we're actually able to turn the tap on. But that will restore our capacity lost to this plant. That will not restore, however, the redundancy. We're still missing. If we're going to maintain those volumes that we get in the summertime, we need a larger amount of water in the summertime, and that's where phase 2 comes in. So at one point in the future, 10 years out, when this plant needs some major reconstruction work, then at that point we should have phase 2 ready to help the town. And the phase 2 is to build a pipe big enough to replace the capacity of this treatment plant. But we will keep the Mill Pond treatment plant. So we will have a redundant system. The Mill Pond treatment plant will allow us to supply the baseline of water that the town needs. MRWA will be able to supply the added needs that we get in the summer. Plus, it will allow us the redundancy if we have any work to do and the maintenance work to do at that facility. We'll be able to actually supply the town entirely from the MRWA while we do the work. So it's like a 10-year plan. It's not an immediate plan.
Sure. So we're talking about MRWA here, which is the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, and basically they are the state authority. It's a quasi-state agency that is in charge of the water that comes from the Quabbin Reservoir. So why go to that water source at this time?
Well, we had the other option that you can look at is Bill Ricker has a treatment plant. Yeah. And you'll say, okay, well, they may have water to provide us. However, they use the Concord River for the water supply. As you've seen in 2016 when we had the drought, and you've seen all the rivers, including the Concord River, their capacity is diminished by the quantity of water in the river. So we need a stronger source.
Right, that's drought resistant at this point in time.
Right.
And so the MRWA, which controls the Quabbin Reservoir, has right now the Quabbin Reservoir has a source of water for 5 years out. So they weren't affected by the drought this last time. So the Quabbin has the capacity, and MRWA is looking for more clients to sell water to for their functioning system. Now, the discussion I've heard from town meeting members is MRWA. Well, 10 years ago, that was a nasty thing to say, because MRWA was quite expensive as compared to local water. Has that changed?
Well, there is a misconception what is expensive and what is not expensive, and that needs to be clarified, right? Because you can't compare your water bill to the Lexington's water bill or the Bedford's water bill and say, oh, because they're at MRWA, they're more expensive. Our water is almost as expensive as the MRWA water. We just don't happen to charge for it. So this plant, the water that comes out of this plant is actually, I think it's probably about $3,200 per million gallon, and the MRWA sells water at $3,400 per million gallon. So it's very comparable, the cost. Like I said, though, we do not charge our residents for 100% of the cost.
Not through the water rates.
Correct.
We charge them through the tax rate. So that's a difference that we have here in Burlington compared to other communities, is that your water rate is subsidized by the tax rate here. That's not the case in a lot of communities.
And we also happen to have a separate commercial rate than residential rate.
Yeah.
So so for about the same amount of water used, because the commercial properties in town use about the same as the residential in a year's time, the commercial properties carry 2/3 of the revenue versus the residential side 1/3. So
sounds like a good deal for the residents.
That's the way it's always been. Yeah. The way we have structured the rates in the past is that from the rates we only pay for the O&M, the operation and maintenance, and the tax levy will pay for the capital expenses.
Wow. So we're looking at going to town meeting May 14th, and the idea is to join MRWA, and so there's a fee to be able to purchase water from them. So there's an entry fee, to getting in. So right. What's that fee?
Right. It's based on an average amount of water that a town may take. It is $4.6 million per million gallons of water.
Right. So we're looking to purchase up front 1 million gallons on the average, that we have the right to purchase on a daily basis. And that is a one-time fee going in. Then we pay for the water after that.
Correct.
Once it comes through. But that gives us the buy-in fee, the entry fee, to be able to take that 1 million gallons. Now, we can up that down the road, but it will be 4.6, per million every time we, up that number as we move forward.
That's right.
So that's phase one, is joining MWRA with that entry fee. Phase two is building a new connection to Lexington along Adams Street so that we have the capacity to bring that 1 million gallons per day into town. So that'll be phase two. That's the second I don't want to say phase two. That's the second portion of phase one, in that discussion.
Right. We want to have a line that is big enough to get the 1 million gallons of water into the town. And we also want to make sure that we don't disturb the Lexington's water system, because they really, to get that water here, will have to go through their Lexington's distribution system, which is not unusual, but it's not typically what you would like. So phase two is where we actually go out and build a new transmission main, totally independent of any other town, where we connect directly to the MWRA, and we're able to supply water in one of our pipes all the way to the town.
And that, I don't want to say it's an infinite number, because it's not, but it is going to be a large enough gallonage so that we can rely on MWRA into the future in case we're having a problem with Mill Pond or we need to shut that plant down. That will give us our full capacity into the future.
Right. I mean, like we do with any other projects, when the biggest expense is not opening the hole and start putting pipe in the ground. So you're going to size the pipe big enough for way into the future, for whatever needs the town may have. And as you said, if we need to do maintenance at that facility, no matter which time of the year it may be, or if there's an emergency at that facility, we should be able to supply the town without many issues. One of the things that I do want to mention is that people have said to me as we talked about this, is that, well, if we have access to Lexington and to Billerica during an emergency, then why don't we just stay like that?
Yeah.
Now, our experience is every time we have instituted a water restriction, it takes many weeks before we see our water demand going down. It's unfortunate, but it's not immediate. We can't go and shut off people's water or irrigation systems. The last time around, it took more than 3 weeks to get the demand to go down, and it took over 500 letters that we have to send to specific residences saying, you're in violation of the water restriction. If you continue to be in violation, we will issue fines. So it's not that easy to get to that point. So when we said earlier, to be redundant, we will run out of water in probably a day and a half or 2 days before these people will even get letters to know that they have to shut off their irrigation system. So it's an issue that we need to provide safety for the residents and for fire flow.
I think it's key to understand too that we're not in control of our water. So even though we pump our water and we spend the funds to get the water to the people, we don't make the final decisions on how or when we can utilize this water. That's through other agencies. So water in Massachusetts is completely controlled by the Department of Environmental Protection of the state, DEP, and the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. So we're under all these guidelines, restrictions, and governing rules from these agencies. So even when we're utilizing water, so when you go on the emergency water piece and take water from Lexington or Billerica, we first need permission to do that, don't we?
Yeah, so the first thing we need to do is, as we did in 2016, I believe at the end of that summer, we needed to connect because our reservoir was very low at that point. The first thing you have to institute is a full water restriction. So they will not even issue a permit for us to connect to anything until a full outdoor water restriction is issued by the Board of Selectmen. So it's, like I said, it's not that easy. It's not an automatic. How much water we use from our wells is regulated.
Right.
Our pumps can pump more water out of the wells, but we can't. We have to follow the rule. Day by day, we can't exceed the amount of water we take. The Shoshone River, well, in the summertime it normally goes dry, but say it didn't go dry, we're still can't take water from the Shoshone River until we get to a certain volume that is also regulated.
Right.
So pretty much until now, we're able to get as much water as we can through the winter. That's why we fill out the reservoir. Once that April, May comes around, we are restricted on how much water we can take. By June, we pretty much can't take anything.
So a lot of research has gone into this decision. Hopefully people understand that. And, a lot of research has gone in. So we first had the study by Stan Tech a couple of years ago, giving us our options. Then when we saw that, we've been working with DEP, which is monitoring, all our situation here and has been, for many years, but they're fully aware of our wells being down, and they've been working with us as to what some of our options are. And then finally with MRWA, and a lot of modeling has been done, to make sure that all this works and that there is capacity for us to draw.
Right. I mean, this is is sort of good in a way that our neighbors are good neighbors.
Yeah.
So whether it's Lexington, Bedford, as well as the MRWA as a supplier, everybody's been helping to do this and put these things together. Just Thursday night, we had crews out doing some flow testing to make sure that there's capacity in the system. So all of that has been working out really well for us, but a decision has to be made going forward. As we stand right now, we have to continue to have the year-round water restriction. We will talk about it when a selectmen's meeting coming up, just to send a reminder to our residents that that restriction is still in place. And the reason for it to stay in place is so we can have that limited emergency connection if anything were to happen to us during the summer.
Right. It might not be used completely all the time, or the restrictions will rise as we have more problems with the water. So it could be the point where we had 2 years ago where no water usage was allowed at all.
Right.
For outside usage. And the other problem, of course, we have with redundancy is the proliferation of these irrigation systems. They keep getting built. So we went from 10 years ago to having basically very few, in town, and more of a commercial sector, to now that every time, a house is being redone in this town, it's coming with an irrigation system.
Yeah, we went from, I think it was about 450 residential ones to, we are approaching 1,000 right now.
Over the last couple of years.
I'll say a little longer, maybe the last 5 years or so.
Okay.
So it's been increasing a lot, and it's hurting us. It's really hurting us. I do want to. We haven't talked about the part of redundancy that again, the other thing that we heard from people is like, well, this emergency really happened.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that we have had a plane crash right here. We have to shut down the treatment plant. We have had generators going out on us at the Mill Pond during Christmas Day. The entire water department and electricians were trying to make that run so we can supply water to the town. But most recently, just in January 13th of this year, we had an issue at this treatment plant with some frozen pipes due to how cold the weather was at the time of the year. And at the same time, we had enough water main breaks in the town because of the same issue with freeze-ups that we were started losing capacity in the system. Our water tanks were literally going down to the point that they were going to go dry. And on a Saturday, we were able to, because it was wintertime, we didn't have to institute an outdoor watering restriction because nobody's watering in January, but we're able to get those emergency connections open so we can maintain capacity in our system. Otherwise, we would have gone dry. This just happened a couple of months ago.
So we've been talking about the cost of this too. Obviously, there's a cost, of this, and that's what we're going to town meeting for. We've done our projections. So we're talking about raising, this will be funded through water rates, raising the water rates, and we're looking at just over a total over 10 years of 30%. So we're looking at 3% on a yearly basis of raising our water rates. The average water rate in town, we talk it being about $400.
Yes, less than that.
Less than $400. So when you look at it over a 10-year period, we're talking about raising that $400 to about $500. Give or take, depending on your household, in order to pay for this system moving forward, and that's for the entire system as we move forward. So that's what we have. That will all be presented at town meeting. We have a full review again of this next Tuesday night. We're looking at April 24th on a Tuesday night, so you'll probably be watching this after that. But that will be filmed, and that will be available on BCAT. We've been talking about this. If you go to BCAT, BCAT News ran, Rich Hosford's BCAT News ran some editions on this recently, talking about our situation. We did a tour of this, or a discussion of this all last year on Town Administrator's Corner, and there's a lot of meetings that are occurring. So we will be presenting this on Tuesday, May 14th, to the annual town meeting, seeking approval of this. But we've really been trying hard to get this information out so that people can understand our water right now is safe. What we're looking to do is continue the safety and create redundancy in our water system so that we have water into the far future, so that we're not dealing with these issues as we go along. If we do nothing, we will be having problems with water, and water restrictions will be more of a daily event, come summertime, if we do nothing. So we need to do something here.
Right, and as I keep on saying this too, like, we've been very lucky that those issues that we had happened at the right time, meaning like an issue in January where our demand was only about 3.5 million gallons a day. Had that happened in the summertime, even if they're connecting to Lexington, we still wouldn't have enough water to supply the town. This is why we need a solution. We need a solution now.
So maybe this is time where, I give some credit to you, John, and to your crew here, Russ Mackey, the plant manager here, Brian Johnson, the chemist, and the rest of the crew here. We have nine people who work out all together out of the water plants. They do yeoman's work. They're here. They've been here on Christmas days, addressing problems, as John is talking about. And this is an operation where we're running 7 days a week. We have people in the plants 7 days a week, sometimes 24 hours going through. So this isn't just an 8 to 5 operation Monday to Friday. Yeah. So we're here a lot.
And over the last 5 years, even with the water restrictions that we had, John, because of the limited amount of personnel, when you do the count, like 8 operators working 3 shifts a day at 2 separate treatment plants, it just doesn't add up. There is not enough hours, so there's a lot of overtime that they have to work. There's a lot of time that even in the summertime they have to be here so we can provide enough water to the town.
I just want to give credit to our crews here who do a magnificent job in keeping this, and those are people you don't see out in TV land, but the people we know that are here constantly. I mean, if you look at this plant back here, this is immense, and we got 2 of these. So I know I can go around, push a lot of buttons, and cause a lot of trouble here. But there's a lot of knowledge base, to keep these plants operating. So that's what we have. So May 14th, we will be presenting the plan to annual town meeting, and hopefully they will support what the Board of Selectmen and the town meeting water study committee are fully endorsing with unanimous votes, so that we can make our changes, so that we can provide water into the future here. But again, water quality is very good at this point. We meet all the standards, and we're looking for safety, issues moving forward, redundancy, and making sure that we have the water availability for the town. Any closing remarks you want to make?
I do want to thank you and the selectmen and everybody who's worked behind the scenes trying to get to where we are right now. It's been a long process. There's been a lot of talk about which is the best ways to proceed. Yeah. And I believe finally we're all in agreement that this is the best way to go. Keeping our Mill Pond treatment plant active into the future as our main water source, and supplemented with the MRWA.
So we have the votes of the Board of Selectmen and the Town Meeting Water Study Committee at this point. You met with your subcommittee from Ways and Means on Friday. They voted 2-0 to support. Ways and Means meets tomorrow night, so we'll be presenting to Ways and Means to get see if we get their support. Capital Plan has heard all this, and hopefully we'll get their vote, support moving forward. So far we're on target to be ready for May 14th, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free to contact us. This is an important issue for the town, and we hope you agree with the recommendations that are being made, and this gets approved at May 14th town meeting. So I want to thank John for joining me today, Rich Hosford, our cameraman from BCAT, and a lot of information is available through BCAT. They are a great source of information for us. And I'm John Petrin, Burlington Town Administrator, and thank you for joining us.